All right, hey yo, we are religion. Welcome to my video. Today, I'm going to be talking about sympathy for the ego. In a lot of circles, a lot of pop psychology circles, or even like esoteric or spiritual circles, a lot of people, or even like political, just societal, general circles. A lot of people say, your ego is getting in the way. Um, And I like to say that is kind of correct because your ego is really, in layman's term, like I know it has a connotation of being prideful or you just being prideful. Really, that's really people equate ego with pride nowadays, but that's more of an implication they garnered from just over time. In general, ego meant self-identification. And didn't necessarily accrue to pride. Like, so an example would be what I'm talking about is a person can have ego and they be a Christian. You know what I'm saying? But they're not necessarily arrogant about their status as a Christian. They just identify as a Christian. They see themselves as a Christian. Hence, that's their ego. So that's what I mean. You can have an ego about being a soldier. Like in your mind, you're a person who put the mission first. You're a person that's 10 minutes prior to 10 minutes prior. You're a person that like weaponry. You're a person that exercise, like physical fitness. You put the group before yourself. You get what I'm saying? That's your ego. Your ego, you self-identify with those traits, so it becomes ego. Pride is I won't say perversion, but it's an extrapolation of your stance towards your ego. So you can have ego about anything, but pride comes in when you think those things make you that it's beyond thinking you unique. It's having a um a station above people because of how you see yourself. You get what I'm saying? So that's why it plays into like narcissism or delusions of grandeur, but those aren't necessarily intrinsic to having an ego, because the ego, in life is about self-preservation and self-preserving your identity. So that's why when you can chat, if you challenge someone's belief, they can get upset because they'll feel as if you're attacking them because that's their ego, you know. And in that sense, yes, your ego can get in the way, but it's not necessarily pride. It's more about self-preservation and keeping the psyche intact, because if you go back to Comedics, Set of the desert, even though yes, he killed the Tsar and he broke up the god body, which was a Tsar. Set also represents the defender of Ra. Ra was like the consciousness back then. It was like the light of consciousness, the deity, the Set in the third eye. That was Ra, and Set was the protector of that, meaning your ego. Your ego protects you, even your left brain protects you from things that could cause harm to your sense of self. So your left brain filters information to your right brain. Set protected Ra from Apet, which was the chaotic snake, um, which was things that would like corrupt your consciousness. So that's what the purpose of the ego is. It protects your inner like sanctum from anything that might get in the way. But your ego can be corrupted. But let me explain what I mean by this. It can be corrupted, but it's more like a switch. The switch ain't good or bad. If you turn it up, it's gonna come on. The light's gonna come on. If you turn it down, the light will go off. But the switch is just a switch. You control the switch. You're not the switch. You know. So, the personalities we have down here are just things we adopt to survive here. Like my ego is Jacarish, and that encompasses a whole variety of things. Your ego would be whatever you identify with. Would that be religion? Would that be occupation? Would that be a societal status? That's what your ego is. You know, um, Really, what people generally talking about when they saying your ego's getting away, they mean your id, your ID. And I'm talking this from Freud's psychoanalytic theories. So it was the super ego, it was the ego, it was the id. All right, so it's three of them, like kind of like the Trinity, kind of, but not the same. The super ego was about your morals, ideals, and it was akin kind of to like a zealot or a crusader of a kind. They were really devout in terms of things they stood by. They didn't want to break those moral guidelines. They had convictions about breaking them. They felt ashamed when breaking them. They really tried not to. These are the type of person in an extreme way. They would like lash their back if they felt they broke a commandment or a directive of their faith. Um, there were so that's the super ego. You can even see them in the form of kind of like deities a little bit, or at least deities that have a prevalence of like law and order. So Jesus could kind of be an example of a super ego, or angels in general. Moving on, the ego is like a selector switch. So when you turn it to the id, you know, it's ID. Think about when someone said, "Man, why I do that? That was stupid." You know, people have false idols, IDOL. You know, if someone do something that don't make sense, like they have no forethought into it, it was wild, it was out of place, you would say they were an idiot, IDIOT. You know what I'm saying? So that's really the id. The id is about instinctual like processes, um, like hunger, sex, instant gratification, and it's all about getting that now. You know, it wants it at that moment. How fast can it get it? It don't really think about how it hurts anybody to get what it wants. That's your id, you know, and most people associate that with the devil, like temporary um, gratification, you know, lack of what is it? Whenever lack of self gratification, you know. So when you turn your ego and you identify with the id, you become like that person that becomes someone that just tries to think about their own ends. And even if you're not into like short term gratification, your ego can be your ego is essentially the mediator between your super ego and your id. So it decides, whichever it chooses, how to make a plan to come up with those things. So if you choose your id, you could be like a gangster, like a criminal. Like they want money, they want prestige, they want power. And how they do this is, but the ego turns to their id, and they use the ego to, you know, come up with a plan on how to get that, whether that be short term or long term. You could be like a really good criminal or a really bad one, quote unquote. But if you just turn your ego to your super ego, you'll be like, okay, how can I come up with a nonprofit to help homeless people? You get what I'm saying? And people wouldn't say your ego is getting in the way, but that's still your ego. You just identify with either the super ego or the id. So I just wanted to clarify those things about the ego, because the ego gets a lot of bad rep, but people aren't looking at it. They're looking at it in a buzzword kind of way, in terms of ego is it's pride. That's not necessarily true. That's kind of just tacked onto the ego. The ego kind of becomes a scapegoat, the middle guy. And a lot of people try to like put their blame on the ego, but really it's just your self choice. So thank you for coming. Hope you learned something today, and peace out.